Gron, I'm going to pass it over to you, and we're going to talk about watershed culture.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I want to introduce the basic high-level vision of the card. We'll just call it the card, which has got all three aspects of our vision, our values, and our cultural concepts, and how it all came about. But I want to go back about 10 years ago. We were kicking this idea around of what our vision is, and I think a lot of you have heard that story of serving people and how it all came about up at Trevor's cabin. And then we were talking about all these concepts we had and the values of the company. And I remember an experience I had. I was at Home Depot with my little kids. They were probably 4 and 5. And we were walking around Home Depot, and all of a sudden they had to use the restroom. And so I kind of walked to the back of the store, and my daughter went in hers and my son went in his. And then I was just kind of standing out in the lobby area waiting for them to come out. And I look around, and on the wall at Home Depot, they had the company values and their core concepts and what they were about. And I'm reading this, and there's words on there. I'm like, none of this is happening at my Home Depot here in Gilbert. I'm like, this is odd. Like, they're like, we're here to help. We're going to have employees in every aisle to serve you and help you with DIY projects. I'm like, I've never had that experience. And we're all about cleanliness and efficiency and short lines. And it just wasn't the experience that I was experiencing as a customer. And I was often wondering, is the manager not enforcing these values, or does he even know what they are? And we're in the process of creating all this. And so we were doing a lot of research. And then another story, this guy got a new job at a very exclusive company, and he was the new CEO. And when you walked into this office, they had etched the company values and mission statements on the side of the wall. What would it cost to etch all that in this? You can imagine in marble, right? And he walks through these beautiful doors and this beautiful marble entranceway, and right there etched is what we're all about. And so on one of his first meetings, he went around the boardroom. It's like, hey, can you just remind me what the vision and the values and the mission is of the company? And everyone goes, yeah, I'm not quite sure. I knew that though when we started. And then he went around the room and he just kept asking, and then they kept talking about it, and then they kind of pieced it together, but they weren't right. And he goes, are we even, you guys walk by it every single day? And it was a realization, is it just words on the wall, or are we actually doing them? Do we live them? And it was like, as we put this together, we want to be very careful. Do we really do these words, or do we just put them up on the wall? And so as we introduce them, so real quick, if you don't have one of these cards, your DMs all seen them. Many of your GMs have seen them. If you don't have these cards around, DMs, get them ordered, hand them out, have them stacks, paste them on the walls. I know Amy has all the posters. Some of you guys have the posters. I was touring in Texas. I don't think every site has all the posters, all the concepts. They might have a few of each, but let's make sure you have this on the wall. Let's just do that first, right? And then this card has basically got three different things going on. There's the vision of the company, which we hopefully all should know. If you don't know the vision of the company, you should slug your manager in the shoulder right now. It's like not good. But the vision is serving people, right? Doing what's in the best interest of others. We all should know that. If we were at a boardroom, everyone should have that answer. And if you turn that card over, there's the values of the company, which is different. That's the vision is serving people. The values is honesty, generosity, and gratitude. Those are 3 words. That'd be like if you're building a bridge. These are the pillars that we're going to build on. We're going to build a company around honesty, around generosity, and gratitude. And we'll talk about that throughout this next 8 weeks as well. There's videos about those 3 words, lots of dialogue around that, right? And then the final one is the concepts, the cultural concepts. And those are the words that we think are going to get us the best chance to success. And you remember, we often talk about 96% of businesses fail. It's not because they fail because they didn't have a vision, they didn't have a plan, they didn't execute on these concepts. And so I want you guys to read this little paragraph right above our concepts. It says, we believe these concepts, when executed consistently, give our business the best opportunity to succeed. It doesn't guarantee success. It gives us the best opportunity for success. And so we want to fight against that idea that 96% of businesses fail. These 13 words gives us the best chance to succeed. And so I want you guys to write this word down, this idea of stacking these values, stacking them. You have one value, and we'll talk about hustle, which is great. But if you had just hustle and not the other 13, that's good. But if you can start stacking these values, you could get it's like a video game. You have maximum power. You know, you've done all your levels. It's like, man, you start stacking all. You like that, Steven? You start stacking these values, and it's like amazing how your life just unfolds, and it gets very, very clear. So as we go through this 18 weeks, let's remember that word stacking. Hey, Dan, I sent you that those 4 concepts. Can you throw those up there real quick for me?
Sure.
I want you guys to think about this. Do you know these visions, these values, these concepts? Do you know what they are? And oftentimes I'll walk around the sites and I'll say, do you know them? And everyone's like, oh yeah, I know them. Yeah, I couldn't tell you what they are, but I've heard them and I do know them. And then my question is, do you live them? Do you really live them? And they're like, well, yeah, I think so. And then you teach them. And this is where people get tripped up. I don't teach them, because if you have to teach something, that means you really know them. So this challenge for the next 8 weeks is for you to know them, to live them, and then to start teaching them. And then here's where Watershed has really taken off. If you enforce them, and that's what Bobby was talking about, all of our policies, our procedures, are we enforcing our policies and procedures? Are we enforcing our concepts, our cultural values? And that's really for the DMs and the site managers to really ask yourself. We have found if you're not enforcing them, things get off the rails pretty darn quick. And you can kind of see that once you start enforcing them, it feels good and feels natural, right? Do you have anything to add, Craig or Mark, on the card in general?
No.
Mark, any thoughts?
Perfect. No, thank you.
So just remember, start stacking these as we go. Start stacking all these words: consistency, attitude, generosity, serving people, hustle. It's just gonna start to feel good. Okay, Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I love what you just said. If you were to have, let's say we were so busy last week, imagine if you guys were hustling and you had a lot of teamwork, but your attitude sucked. It's like it's for nothing. It's imagine a bunch of grumpy looking, like, you know, loading like this, like if our attitudes aren't right. So it's amazing how they all compile. Or if you have amazing attitude, but then you're like, you don't hustle and there's no teamwork, there's no towels out. It's amazing how they all go together and how important that is. And so you said it, and I just wanted to echo that one time. It's just that is so important, that it's a collective of all of them together that really makes something special.
I appreciate Hyro consistently, probably now for 2 years. I don't think anyone ever put him up to it, but he puts those cultural concepts. I think it's every Monday he puts those things up there. It's by way of reminder, man. I can't even remember what I had for dinner 3 nights ago. So I need to be reminded of these concepts. Me as an owner, I can forget and I can get overwhelmed and not live out these concepts on a day-to-day basis. So constantly reminding, reviewing with your team, it's so important. It goes a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the first of them, and thank you so much for teaching us the card. I think that card is powerful, and I think that's probably landed us more business deals and more investors than we've ever thought it would. I don't know if you guys can agree with that, but like, I mean, when you guys show that card, you blow people away. Gronin, you met with someone yesterday that you were just kind of showing them, this is what we stand for. And the guy was like, this is amazing. Like the guy was blown away. And now we're just so used to it. And like, sometimes we don't even know where they are.
Yeah.
And so
none of these words, by the way, it's not about car washing or soap and chemical. You need all of that, but these words can really relate to any business. And by the way, you'll hear them all as we go, but they've all been R&D from other companies, right?
Researched and developed? Is that what you meant?
We borrowed them, we ripped them off from companies like Disney, Ritz-Carlton, Chick-fil-A, from our own experiences. Last, believe it or not, came from one of our competitors. And so we've taken the best thinking out there of everything we've come across over the last 5 years of business and said, man, and we started probably with, in the cultural concept section, probably about 22 words. And we've kind of boiled that down to 10. We've added some words back in, and we've kind of landed here at these 13. And and they all work together.
Absolutely.
They're phenomenal. And everyone has a favorite. Someone asked me, what's your favorite the other day? And I'm like, I don't know. They're all like babies to me. I love them all. They're all fantastic. I don't know if I'd get rid of any of them at this point after looking at them for the last 10 years. Do you agree with that?
Totally.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess we can get rid of Kaizen. No, you got to have a culture of constant, never-ending improvement, right? You got to have. I guess you can get rid of 5S. You're like, are you kidding? That's fantastic. You open up our toolboxes and it's like right there, and it's like, no, you wouldn't want to get rid of that one either. So it's phenomenal. However, that's why I keep going back. You know them, not did you memorize them, but you know what they are, the genesis of these concepts. And that's the challenge for the next 8 weeks, to have 100% of our staff really know these.
And the reason why Groningen keeps saying 8 weeks is that because that's our rotation. We're able to get through all of the 17 items in an 8-week rotation. And so today we're going to be covering the first week. And Jairo, dude, shout out to that dude. He's been sending them every single Monday, every Monday for the last 2 years. So awesome job, Jairo. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for the love. So when we look at today, we're going to be looking at the first of the 3. And we're going to be hearing from the owners. So once again, my phone's open. Text me if you have any questions. But Grondin, can you teach us on the idea and the concept of teamwork? And where do you kind of see it today, and what the value is of it?
Again, we're going to switch. Craig's got to jump to a meeting. So
Mind if I go first?
What do you think? Of course.
Thanks for asking.
Oh, okay.
Okay, get it, Craig.
Yeah.
I see you jumping.
I feel so far apart. I need to.
He's hustling.
That's hustle. Yeah, exactly.
When old school is going
Podium.
Oh, yeah.
you can
There we go.
Get the podium.
Craig, zoom with the iPad. Zooming in.
What's
on
up,
you.
Oklahoma?
Currently, his face is like
Hey,
right.
nice to see ya. So yeah, they challenged me with the topic of hustle, and gosh, to wash 26,000 cars last week between Texas, Oklahoma. I mean, it goes without saying, you couldn't do that without little bit of hustle. And I couldn't believe Dan said that there was no one at the Zips, 1 mile away. I didn't believe that was actually happening. So really, this is just kind of by way of reminder and review, because I think overall, we do have a culture of hustle. And I like to give kind of a definition of the word. It's hard to teach and know something without a definition. And so the definition of hustle is to proceed or work with, to be rapid or energetically. And interesting, to work rapidly, obviously that's part of hustle, but I thought it was really interesting that it was energetically. And to be energetic means to live a full life, to be full of life. It's more of an attitude and a demeanor. And as we started these concepts probably 8 years ago, and we introduced this hustle, I'll never forget this kid over at Chandler Boulevard. It was the 3rd Clean Freak site. He really took this hustle thing to heart. And this kid from the vacuum area, if a customer pulled up, would be on a full-on sprint to the XPTs. He was hurtling over landscape medians, and it was complete idiocy. I mean, that was not anywhere near our definition of hustle. It was really stupidity because of the danger he put himself in every time he did it. But he thought it was pretty
But we
cute.
loved him though, Craig. I mean, Cody was awesome, dude. That dude was like an Olympic sprinter in the lanes or in the parking lot.
Pretty crazy. But I thought it's interesting. It's not just how fast you work, but it's more or less how you work. And as I was watching video of the grand opening of Calibra, and I'm watching Kyle walk around the site, and it was really interesting just to see Kyle's pace and his stride. It's like he's got this long stride and he's walking quick, but he's in control. And I'm like, wow, like he's hustling. I can tell that's the guy in control. I can tell he's the manager. From video, I could just tell that this guy is know what he's doing. And if you walk with urgency, everyone thinks you're the guy in control, that you're the man, you're the manager. It's interesting how it works versus an old guy. Old guys shuffle their feet, I can't stand when people drag their heels on the ground. Guys who do that, it's so annoying. So it's just in these little, idiosyncrasies and how you move and manage yourself is a big part of hustle. And really this concept came to Mark and I. We were in athletics playing baseball around 7, 8 years old, and our coach demanded that you hustle. He says it's respect. It honors me, the coach, and it's respect for your teammates. And so it translates to you guys. Hustle is respect with your coworkers, your customers, and your managers above and below you, right? It's teamwork, it's part of teamwork. And when you hustle, you're serving people. And when it's on display, it shows that you care, that you're engaged, that you've taken ownership of your position, and that you have confidence in your position. People who hustle don't really need to be told what to do. They have a plan, they have a direction. You come in, and it doesn't matter where you are. Tracy in here, she always is moving quickly. She's engaging people. She has a plan. I mean, everyone is stopping by Tracy's desk because it's contagious. People want to be around people who hustle. It's a very attractive quality. And you guys see it within your teammates or your coworkers, the people who work with you. If I say, think of the people on your teams that hustle, they instantly come to mind. You know them. And because it's an attractive quality and it sticks out. And so when you find people hustling, you want to give them props for doing so because it's very attractive. And it's so clear to the naked eye. And it plays out in all the little tasks that they do. I don't care if it's folding towels, if it's emptying trash, if it's loading cars. You guys have seen loaders who really don't care, and their arms look like they weigh 20 pounds apiece, and they're just going through the motion. Versus when I pulled up Southwest or Southeast Military on Sunday, I believe it was Vivian. She was dark hair. I couldn't see her face, but I believe it was Vivian. And it is truly amazing how many cars they can process at Southeast Military with 2 cars after the gates and a wonky queue getting in. Man, I watched her for 5 minutes. Every car hustled up to it, loaded it on the conveyor, walked up to the next car, loaded on the conveyor. And I was in awe watching this. I'm like, wow, if everyone could load and hustle like that, what an organization we'd have. And from the customer's point of view, customers don't mind. Actually, I think they enjoy going to a busy site. They don't mind the long lines. When they see people hustling and Vivian moving from car to car, and the people and the sales guys at the XPTs moving, and they see everyone, like ants in a synchronized motion, they are okay with waiting. They just want to see that the employees are engaged and care about and respect their time. And there's nothing more annoying than when I go to a sporting event. The concessions are famous for long lines, no one caring. I got a game to get back to in 5 minutes. And so it's so frustrating when you go to these long lines and no one is operating and no one cares. So hustling is a respect to everyone around you. You respect people's time. And so why are these organizations so few and far between? I can think of a couple. When I go into a quick trip, it always seems, they got 2 registers, one guy working 2 registers. They're cognizant of people's time. They want to get you in and out. And In-N-Out Burger is another one where I see people in the back kitchen cutting potatoes, frying potatoes. Everyone just seems like a well-oiled, greased machine. So when everyone's hustling, it just looks like you know what you're doing. So the reason why most organizations aren't doing it is because they don't talk about it and they don't coach it. So I would just encourage you guys as managers to be talking about these cultural concepts. It takes 2 minutes, but you got to constantly remind your teammates what they are. And then when you don't see it played out on site, have the courage to call them out. And then even more importantly, when you see it played out on site, applaud your teammates for hustling and doing a great job. The customers are watching. When they pull up, they are so engaged and so perceptive about what's going on site, and they're watching you. They're watching your behavior. They can tell whether or not you care about your job or not. So I would just keep that in mind as you're hustling, and appreciate your time.
Greg, do you think that an employee holding a phone, kind of just scrolling through text, do you think that looks like hustle?
Doesn't care.
Doesn't give a darn, right?
I'm hoping that's the employee that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or if you're just watching and people are so observant. I went to military and I was like in the long queue. I think someone asked me, Hyro was like, what are you doing in the queue? Like, I just was kind of waiting to get the full experience of waiting on the street, pulling in. And I was really observant. And listen, I worked there, so I'm probably more observant. But like, I was like looking, I wanted to see like where someone was at. Like, I wanted to know why the queue is taking long. Was there a delay? Like, it's amazing how observant we are as consumers. And how naive we are sometimes as employees. We're like, no one's really looking at me. It's like, people are watching.
From the beginning.
Great point. Yeah, they're watching closely. Thanks.
Right. Great job. That was awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Next up is Mr. Mark McDowell. We're going to be talking about attitude, which is one of our absolute favorites. I love Grundon's. You really fought for that picture, Grundon. Do you remember fighting for that, the golden retriever?
Dog.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. It just perfectly fits it. All right, Mark, you're up.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to be talking about attitude. And if you'll notice on the cultural concept card, it's number 1. And I don't think that's by accident, because that's how important it is. Like Craig, let's start off with a definition of attitude, because if we don't know what it means, how do we apply it? So an attitude is a way of thinking about someone or something, and it will reflect in your behavior. So your attitude and how you think will flow out of how you act to others and treat others. So if you would agree with me, probably, I think you will, most of life, we don't get to control. It's out of our control. Think about it. We didn't know the time of our birth. We didn't know what country we'd be born into. We had no control who our parents would be. We had no control whether we'd have brothers or sisters. You don't have any control about what you're going to look like. You have no control over your gifts, your talents, and your abilities. You'll find that most of life is out of control. But great news is your attitude, you are in full control of. So I believe that success in life can be determined in how you handle the circumstances that flow in and out of your life, which you have no control over. So I liken attitude to like land, and it starts in the mind. And we're gonna talk more about how attitude is a part of the mind. But attitude is like, if I liken it, it's like a piece of land. It's neutral. And what you plant in the land or your brain is what you're going to get, is what's going to develop, what's going to grow. So if you're planting good, good will flow out, right? Because it's a way of, remember the definition, attitude is a way of thinking, and it will reflect in behavior. So if you plant negative, your behavior will be negative. If you're planting positive, you're going to be positive. I also liken it to working out. I've loved workouts since freshman year in high school when I hit the gym there in PE, and I've always been doing it. So I like to equate a lot of life to physical fitness. Having a good attitude is like working out. If you put the work in it for any period of time, you're going to see the results. The problem is most people don't give a whole lot of thought towards attitude, so nothing really changes. And if we're going to have our attitude directed by just the culture around us, you can watch the news for one night and start developing a bad attitude, because 95% of what you see on the news is bad. So you start implanting all these thoughts in your head, it will outflow it as well.
Mm.
So attitude is something you have to work at. Everything counts. Nothing is neutral when it comes to attitude. You're going to be either moving in the direction of a good attitude or the direction of a bad attitude. Craig and I found something profound in our 30s, which changed our lives. And up until then, it might be a lot like you as well. We would have thoughts in our head. We had no idea that we actually had control over the thoughts that we had, that the negative thoughts that would come in, we could actually take control of that thought and then replace it with another thought. That changed our lives when we learned that concept. Because this is a very important concept I want you to understand. The will, you may want to write this down because you're going to go back to it, I hope. The will controls the mind. The mind controls the emotions. And your emotions will control your actions. So
One more time.
your will controls your mind. You get to choose your will, what you think about. And then your mind will control your emotions, and your emotions will control your actions. So psychology says that 95% of your feelings come from how you're talking to yourself. That's why point one is, what are you saying about yourself? What do you believe, right? Because attitude is a way of thinking. Your attitude will be the mental picture you have in your mind about yourself, about who you are, and it'll be how you view things. So you need to get control of the pictures that play on the screen of your mind. And there's a way we can do that. Does that make sense? Do I need to repeat any of that? I love the Bible, and I love what God says, and he says it perfectly in the Proverbs. As a man thinks, can I get one sip? As a man thinks, so is he. That's a profound saying. As a man thinks, or woman, so he is. What that's saying is you are the sum of your thoughts. So if you take inventory of your thoughts on a given day, that's who God says you are. And psychology backs that up. And you'll be living that. So it's very, very important what you're thinking about, because it makes up who you are. Let's talk about how a good attitude is achieved, or even bad attitude is achieved. They're achieved the same way, but we need to use it in the positive sense. So this all happens. We've talked a lot about this over the 13 years. It's called the RAS. It's called the reticular vortex in your brain. It's your subconscious, and it's responsible for awareness and arousal. And it works in an amazing way. So RAS is called reticular activating system. The way it works is this. If you get a thought about going to Hawaii, you start thinking about Hawaii. You start looking up Hawaii on the internet. You start talking about Hawaii to your friends. It comes to the front of your brain, and then you can be driving down the street and you'll notice a billboard about Hawaii, or you'll be in a bar and you'll hear a conversation next to you, somebody say the word Hawaii, and you're like, I heard that. Or the same thing is about a sports car. Let's say you have a dream about a sports car. You start thinking about that sports car. Let's say you get a job for the sports car and you want it to be red. All of a sudden, you start noticing every red sports car on the road. It's because you've enacted your reticular vortex in the back of your brain. And when the reticular vortex in the back of your brain is ignited, it will actually act as a command, and you're going to start moving towards activating your goal. So if you're replacing bad thoughts with good thoughts, guess what? It's going to be enacted. It's going to come to the front of your brain. You're going to start thinking about good things. Remember, what you think about is who you are and what your behavior will be. So very important that we start thinking about the right things. So self-talk, right? Take the thought captive. If it's a negative one, throw it in the trash can and replace it with a good thought. You start doing that time and time again, you're going to train your brain to be in the front of the razzle rays. You're going to start thinking about good things, right? But our default position as humans It's we don't want to have a good attitude, right? You can blame nobody but yourself for your attitude. Remember, you can't control circumstances, but you control your attitude towards the circumstances that come into your life. So control what goes into your brain. Let's talk about 3 more things that are good for a good attitude. Who's your reference group? We all have a reference group. It's as babies and kids, it starts off with our family. As we grow to school and grow up, it becomes our friends. And then as we get older, we get jobs, and our reference group becomes our work or clubs that we're associated with or music. So it's very important that you get a reference group that is going to be good for you, that is going to motivate you towards good thoughts, because remember, you're going to act them out. I love another great verse that the Bible talks about. He who walks with wise men will become wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So your reference group, who you hang around, you're going to start thinking like them. You're going to start talking like them. You're going to start acting like them. If it's the wrong reference group, then you need to be responsible for your own life to change that. Does that make sense? Let's talk about another one, a big one. I've learned this through personal experience and having 3 boys of my own. It's diet and exercise, another great way for attitude. I have found with my kids that if they're not fed and they don't get the proper exercise, it changes their whole demeanor and attitude. I know that if I feed my kids too much sugar and not enough protein, it takes them down. They start having negative thoughts about themselves, and they're unmotivated to do anything. So in my opinion, diet, I know for myself too, if I'm not nourished the right way, I come home and I'm hangry. My attitude sucks. And the moment I eat a well-balanced meal or get on the treadmill for 45 minutes, I'm feeling good. So diet and exercise might be a good way to help enact a good attitude. I believe that the most important thing, it's the 4th topic. We've talked about self-talk, reference group, diet and exercise, is a good spiritual faith. And I can only speak from personal experience. I believe it's probably the most important thing for attitude. If you're living a life with no thought towards your purpose or without any eternal hope, it's going to be a pretty big contributor to a mundane or negative attitude. Because if you're living without any purpose or any goal that you want to meet, then that would get me pretty much down. So I would say for you guys, develop a purpose. What are you about? I think that's what actually determines success, is a progressive drive towards a goal. Keep in mind that most people follow the masses and they don't develop a purpose for their life and they don't move towards a goal. And they end up depressed, with no purpose, afraid of the future, and anxious. So I think it's really important to develop something greater than yourself and work towards that goal. And I believe for me, it was my faith in the Lord. I mean, it's changed my life. I remember at 26 years old, my attitude, even though I could fake it pretty well, internally, I was afraid, anxious, with no purpose. And that changed on one Halloween night. And I've never been the same. I've been working towards that purpose. And that purpose has given me an attitude of, man, I want to get outside of myself and invest into other people. So important, control what comes into here, because what comes into here will activate the reticular vortex, bring it to the front of your mind, and you're going to act it out. So put good things in your mind, hang around the right people, get some good diet and exercise, and get some purpose in your life. And this is all going to appreciably affect your attitude. I say, give it 30 days. Think about these things, bring it to the front of your brain, act on them, because if there's no action, it will never change. So give yourself 30 days. What I promise you'll find is that you're going to see yourself changing in the way you think. Guess what happens in 60 days? Your friends and close family are going to notice the change in your life. And guess what happens in 90 days? A simple 90 days. Everybody that meets you will see the change, because you're going to be putting out something different. And I know that, I mean, if I look at our culture here, I know every one of you, I believe, we have an outstanding attitude. That's our culture. And every one of you has smiles and you all seem pretty good, but maybe you're like me when I was 26 years old. Although I could have it on the outside and display it, inside I was wrecked and torqued. It's because I wasn't taking control of my thoughts. I didn't know I could have control of my thoughts and replace them with good things. So that is my motivation and desire for each one of you, that you can be changed by a great attitude. And you guys are all leaders and you're all in front of a lot of people. So you're going to have a lot of people coming in with negative attitudes. And I hope that you can just kind of teach them maybe some of these concepts, that it's in their control and there's nobody to blame but themselves. That's all I got.
Good, right? It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome. Hey, so I have a story I want to bring up. It's about you. This attitude is really powerful. Because I remember one time Mark and I think it was Trevor, we went out to Pokey and it was back in Scottsdale, it was probably 5 years ago. And we were about to sit down at the table. And I remember it was in the same shopping center as where Mark actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but they actually opened up a restaurant called Drexel. Drexel was an opportunity that you guys took, and it was part of, you guys were as owners, you were going to contribute your money. Can you give like just a 10-second, like, or a 15-second commercial on the opportunity you took with your brothers with that?
Yeah,
it was
a quick opportunity. We were so excited. We got to make a small investment into this restaurant that was in our little neighborhood, high-end neighborhood. It became the most expensive mistake I've ever made in my life, and it cost us dearly. And I ended up having to work at Clean Freak and then at night go and work at the restaurant because the guy that we hired to manage it wasn't doing what he said he could do. It was a mess.
A mess. And so money lost, time spent lost. H was like the front of house manager. I remember one time I saw Craig with like a jacket on, like actually delivering plates to tables. Mark was yelling at the chefs to, I need table 57 ready. It was a mess. And all the energy and love that he put into it, and it was heartbreaking. It was hard. It was difficult. And I remember after they sold the business and they closed the doors, this was months later, Mark and I went out with Trevor, and Mark was like, he actually sat down. He's just like, thank you, God, that I don't own a restaurant anymore. Like, he's just like, thank you, God, I'm out of that business. And he didn't say, oh, I mean, I wish I didn't lose all that money, or man, I didn't this. It was this heart that he actually meant genuinely. Oh, I'm just so glad I'm done with that. And it wasn't like, we could all do this. We can always look back in the rearview mirror and be like, oh, I lost a lot of money on that one. Hey, Danny boy, you know what I mean? I lost a lot of money. But no, it's actually this quiet moment where it's like, thank you, God, I'm done with that. I think that's what you said. I can't really quite remember, but I think it was long sentiment of just like, thank you, Lord, I'm over that. I'm done with it. And I was like, are you really thankful? And he's like, oh, so glad it's over. And so, and that's just that heart and that attitude, because you could have the same exact scenario and be hateful and rude and like, that guy failed us, that happened to me, and this is all about what happened to us. And yet he was like, I'm just so glad it's over. And it was like, I was thankful for it. So yeah, I don't know, that always stood out to me. I told you that a bunch of times. But
Scott and I were really talking to yesterday regarding that same thing that Dan's talking about, is having a perspective on life, how you view the world. If you view it negatively, then everything will be negative and there won't be any opportunities for you. Nothing's going to go right. And Scott and I were talking about, like, Scott brought up the illustration of two people with cancer. One sees it as the end of the world, and the other person, dies with grace, knowing that they're going to go home and they're happy and they're joyful still, both with cancer, but both with completely different outlooks. Or two millionaires Scott brought up. One can be a total jerk, arrogant, and thinking that his nothing stinks. And the other guy can be a guy that actually takes that and uses it to help others. And
same scenario, same bank account, same amount of money, but yeah, totally different perspectives for life.
Different perspectives. So if you have a bad perspective, change it.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Mark and Grondin?
I do.
Ready.
Hey, Mark, I have to say, in all my years working here, that is the most inspirational talk that I've experienced, really. I mean that truthfully. And there's some irony in what you were talking about, because I've been studying about thoughts becoming things. And now you are giving a talk on thoughts becoming things. So my thought of that, yeah, evolved, which I love. And the other thing is on attitude. When you change your attitude, you'll notice also people around you. I've been working on being less sarcastic. Dan will remember early on my working here, I used to love to be sarcastic to the point of hurting people, not intentionally, but I would, and Dan would call me out on that periodically. And I've gotten really good at that over the years. But in recent months, people have said to me, what a nice person I am, how good I am to my mom, blah, 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 all that stuff. And I think about it and I'm like, outwardly, like you said, outwardly, I was demonstrating that, but sometimes inside my heart, I wasn't feeling it. And so I've really been working on being nicer and less sarcastic. And I've noticed, I don't think Kurt's in on this meeting right now, but I've noticed of all people, Kurt is really having a hard time with my being nice because he doesn't know what to say. He comes in and he'll say something and I'm just genuinely nice. I genuinely am nice to him. And he goes, oh, well, okay. And he just leaves my office much sooner these days. I'm not intentionally doing that, but it's kind of a nice little side effect because you can feed people your whatever negative or negativity, you can feed that and they will pick up on it, and or you can feed them positive and they'll pick up on that as well. So anyway, thank you. Appreciate your talk today.
That was beautiful.
Words. Hey, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
So, Mark, I know that you just very passionate and you're speaking very informatively about your reticular cortex and your RAS. Ever since you found out about your RAS, which is scientifically proven to change your whole life and literally your whole attitude, just like exactly how you said, how long did you, on just a guess, like how long did it take for you to reprogram that?
I'm still trying to reprogram.
Oh, wow.
And that was 23 years ago. And so, but I think it's progressive. There's some things that had to change immediately in the way that I thought. And so those things I had big ones, a top 4, and those changed immediately within days. And then over the past 23 years, it's been a progression. I don't think the train ever arrives until
Amen.
death. So
Yeah.
it's something that I'm trying to work on a daily basis.
Kaizen.
Yeah, Kaizen, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Spend a lot of time thinking. And I think that is the best way to change an attitude, is to first have it enter your mind, right? It has to enter your mind first. And that starts with the will, right? Remember, the will controls the mind. So you have to want to be successful in this area. If you don't want that, then it'll never change. But then the will, then you think about it. It's going to start controlling how you feel about it. And then you're going to act on it.
Yeah.
A lot of people are scared though. And a lot of people fear that, the positivity will obviously overcome, but like, what would you say is a quick tip real quick? Like, I know you gave like dieting and physical, like, health and all that, but like, what was your biggest like motivation to like just change?
I think because I couldn't stand the person that I was inside, and nobody knew that person except me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, that person was scared of the future,
Mm-hmm.
full of anxiety, depressed, and had no purpose. And that got me desperate. And so I started thinking, I want to change. And that's how it activated the RAS.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about those things, reading about those things. How do I change it? And then that was 23 years ago, and I'm still doing it today, trying to.
Just being proactive.
Proactive, for sure.
Yes, sir. Cool.
I think also you create a vision for your life. And do I want the next 10 years to be like my last 10? Do I want to go up every single day, be miserable, be anxious? And so if you can reprogram that and create a new vision for your life, like you know where you're heading now, and then the RAS, you start stacking that on top of that RAS as well. Okay, what are other people doing that are grateful all the time? How do people live with cancer and still show up happy? How do people have bad backs and show up happy? And so it's back to attitude as a choice, and then you create a vision for yourself, and then you start putting in the work to solve that problem.
Amen.
Hey, one thing I wanted to highlight is that we for the next 8 weeks are going to be diving into our culture, and I want you to know, like, I'm touched by how much Mark and Craig spent in prepping for this and like developing their thought. And like, I have to show you Mark's notes. Don't worry, no peeking. But like, guys, this is 3 pages worth of notes. If I softball to one of you, be like, hey, like, can you talk for 5 minutes, or can you talk for 10 minutes? And it'd be like, oh yeah, I know a lot about attitude. Like, yeah, attitude choice, it's good for customer service. Like, I'm sure it would be so much easier to say, yeah, I know, I got that. I can spitball that one. I can go off the top of my head. For him to make these notes and to the amount of investment, it has to speak for every single one of you that it's worth his time and his investment and his passion to teach and to love you guys enough to spend the time to develop the thought and put it into action and to talk about it. And so thank you. It's a huge investment of time and energy. Craig, if he was here, I'd give him the same love, but they have other things that they could be doing, and yet they're wanting to love you and to teach you. And so I just want to encourage you, mark it down the next 8 weeks on your calendar, every morning at 9 a.m. that you need to be here and invite someone. I'm telling you, if you think this message is good, think about what it could mean to your like supervisor you're pouring into. Think about like and my team, Salesforce. I want every single one of my Salesforce guys to be here because I want them to hear this message. And it's going to range. Sometimes we'll talk about 5S, which, by the way, is not super, like, you will not probably get as much passion as that was, right? Like, there's not 5S ain't too sexy, right? But you're going to hear the heart behind our company, and that this card actually means something. And it's not just these stories that we just threw on a card and said, let's make a company. It's more than that. And so I want you to hear from them. And it's just amazing when you see the passion and what we did and how we created this business. And it's not a mistake that we made it the way we did. And so thank you, Gronin. Gronin's pushing his topic for next week on teamwork. But truly, thank you to Craig and Mark. And I want to put a little fire in you. Come next week, and I promise you, you're going to learn something that you didn't expect. And it's special.